Welcome back, Tommy.
Hi, Audrey. Thanks for having me back.
It's always great to have you with us. And why don't we jump right into this? So we've got the mainstream media, the leftist media, CNN, and they've become basically fake news outlets. They continue the lie, unfortunately started by President Bush, that Islam is a religion of peace. And they say that's because Islam means peace. So, Tommy, can you tell us, does Islam, the term, mean peace? And what's been its example toward the West?
Do you know what you say there? What's happened in my country, what's happened in the West, is that Muslims have been able to come here. They've been able to infiltrate every system and basically lie without being challenged at all. I went to Swansea University last year, and I was debating on a panel with an imam, the local imam. Swansea's in Wales, part of Britain. And as I'm talking to the imam, he started addressing the students, and he stood up and he said, the word Islam translated means peace. And I'm sat there, and I said, no, it's not. No, it doesn't. So, and then he went, I said, come on, what does it mean? I said, the word Islam translated means submit. Submit is the equivalent of surrender. Surrender and peace are opposite words, completely opposite. Right. So, and he nodded his head. He said, yeah. I said, well, what does it mean then? He goes, yeah, it means submit. I said, so how have you just stood up here and told all these people that it means peace? But the problem is that no one's challenged them on that. No one's challenged them on anything. For years and decades, in our universities, in our towns, in our councils, in our education system, everywhere they are, they've been allowed to push this agenda of their ideology. And you also when you point out fake news, one thing that I'm super happy about that's come out of this whole election, your election, is the term fake news. Because what it's now done, it's made people question everything they've heard and everything they've read. Yeah, because they have to from the mainstream media. Now, I've been vilified, slandered, and attacked for 8 years by the mainstream media. I've been labelled a bigot, a fascist, a racist. None of these labels, I don't warrant any of these labels. I've never had any racism or extremism. I've just spoke honestly about Islam. So now I've had so many people messaging me who, since this term fake news has come out, who have reevaluated and looked into what I'm saying rather than the headlines of what the media tell them about me. Right. So that's one great thing that I'm happy that's come out of this election of fake news. But yeah, I'm sitting here, and every day, as I said earlier, every day that I wake up, I turn on my news and I look at what Donald Trump's doing and saying, and I smile every single day. And I can't begin to say that, to be honest, it's been a depressing era in England's history. Where we're at now, it's quite a depressing topic because I don't see any peaceful solution for us in Europe. But to see what's happened with America recently, to see the political revolution that seems to be started, even with Brexit, with Trump, I can see it going on to Holland in March with Geert Wilders, Le Pen, maybe not this time, hopefully, but if not in 4 years' time, things are changing. So things are changing. It gives us hope. So us looking, and I said that before the election, Americans, you're not just voting to save America here. You're voting to save the Western world. You're voting for the whole free world. So we're praying and banking on it as well. And because it will shift things. It's already shifting things. You've seen France coming out. You see, I think that it's moved over a window on issues. So when Donald Trump first mentioned banning Muslims, it brings that topic to the forefront. Look how much of a debate he's caused this week on all of the issues. So, yeah, happy times, good times.
Yeah,
there hasn't been many, but yeah.
No, it hasn't. But now, yeah, it's amazing, and I agree with you. That's exactly what happens to me every morning. I wake up and I smile when I see what he's done, and because of course, the left and our enemies are still putting out a lot of fake news and stupidity. Like, for instance, we just had the World Hijab Day, where they say they recognize women who choose to wear the hijab. Let me tell you something. Women don't choose to wear the hijab. Oh, no. They're either forced, shamed, or beaten into it. Am I correct?
Correct. Or as you see now, so in my hometown of Luton, pretty much every single young Muslim girl from the age of 4 wear hijabs. Schools.
Wow.
All the schools. Like, you go sit outside the school gates. I mean, it's a sight. You sit outside the school gate and every child will come out wearing a green hijab. And I mean like hundreds and hundreds. So that's the future. So it's not like a thing now where they used to be, when they used to say when they get to 16, 17, 18, when they marry, they then put the hijab on. So these children are being indoctrinated from a very young age now. So that's part and parcel. By the time they get in 16, 17, 18, and they're being told it's not about freedom, then they're already slaves to it. They're slaves to Allah already from a very young age. So, yeah.
Wow. I did see that press conference with with President Trump and Theresa May.
And the thing that winds, so the question and the way he dealt with it, this is what's so refreshing to watch. It's because he's not a politician,
right?
And it's so good. So and well, it's even his tweets. But with that press conference, when the BBC, typical BBC journalist, who went over and she brought up all of his, what about this and what about that, what about abortion, and people are scared and British public are scared. And her next meeting the next day was with the leader of Turkey. Now, we all know she wouldn't have gone to him and started questioning his views and his views on women, his views on Sharia. All of his backward and deranged views will not get any question at all.
Yeah,
there'll be no question put to him. And it's like when you see I see it now. Even we have Sadiq Khan, who is our London mayor, who has shared platforms with many terrorists. He's linked to many extremists. And here he is saying that Donald Trump should not be allowed into our country. They should cancel the state visit until he lifts his Muslim ban. Now, tonight, I believe it's tonight, he's having a banquet dinner with 11 state leaders of countries that do not let Israeli Jews in.
Wow.
So the pure hypocrisy. And every time he's being interviewed about this issue, he's talking out a lot about it, about Donald Trump. When you're watching it, you think any real journalist would question him that. Would say, okay, if you've got a problem with Donald Trump not letting people from these 7 countries in, how come you don't have a problem with all the heads of state who you're sharing platforms with and you're very friendly with from 16 Muslim countries who don't let Jews in from Israel?
Yeah.
We'll never let them in. Anyone who has a stamp on their passport is not allowed in. The hypocrisy and what we're seeing again, what this is again has allowed us to see that Sadiq Khan is Muslim first and politician second.
Yeah. Yeah, and England second, because it doesn't mean anything to him.
That won't matter at all to him, no.
Yeah.
Islam first, Islam second, Islam third.
Yeah. Yeah, pick one, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen the leftists really lose their minds here, and then you have real schmuck Starbucks CEO Schultz calls Trump's executive order racist, but has no problem allowing women to be banned in coffee shops in Saudi Arabia. And he's hiring 10,000 refugees to work at Starbucks. Now, what happens, Tommy, when these so-called refugees begin sexually assaulting female employees and become abusive to infidel customers because the Quran tells them that they can? What happens then?
It's like when I'm looking, this is what these people don't understand. So, they should understand, because they've got Europe to look and learn from. If we would have had a Muslim ban in Europe, or not a Muslim ban, a refugee ban. If we'd have had a refugee ban in place 12 months ago, 279 extra people would be alive. Yeah? 5 of the 8 Paris attackers, terrorists from the Paris attack, were refugees. The Berlin lorry driver was a refugee.
Wow.
Time and time again, every single day you could read stories, and some of these stories are so horrific. I read every one of them from every country daily. Yeah? We had a woman taken out of a wheelchair and gang raped by 8 men for hours. We've had in England, in England, we've had 5 Syrian men and 1 Iraqi man. They kidnapped a lady who's a mother of 3 children. They kidnapped her, they held her for the night, they beat her and they raped her. They're all on bail currently for that offence. They're not even in jail. They're all on bail. We've had 4 Syrian refugees in another city called Kent who again gang raped a lady. You've had continuously daily attacks, violent attacks. One story we had near to where I live is an army barracks called Bassingbourne Barracks.
Right.
Now, what they did is they brought 300 Libyan soldiers here, Libyan men, to train for the Libyan army. Now, obviously, bringing them into the UK, these men would have been vetted. So when you're talking about the system and it needs to be real intense vet, these men would have been vetted, because they're coming to live on a military barracks with guns, etc., in the UK. Out of those 300 men, 2 of the men stole a bike went out of the camp, stole a bicycle, rode for 20 miles, and they raped a man in a park.
Oh.
They took it in turns to rape a man in a park. People can look these these instances up. Another 3 of the men went on a spree into Cambridge, which is a city nearby, and they sexually assaulted and attacked 3 women. Yeah. Whilst in these camps, the 300 men caused £500,000, £500,000 worth of damage. You just have to. This is from these one group of men, yeah, that were brought in, that were vetted properly. They caused chaos. In the end, they had to cancel the agreement they'd had with Libya and send the men back. What people need to understand is this is oil and water. Okay, bringing these men here is like mixing oil and water. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. There's not one country you can look to in Europe that you can say is in a success story of integrating or assimilating Islamic refugees or anyone from the Islamic community. It's not working. So we're simply adding to a problem. So, and what I read, which I thought was quite clever, was when you read the reason, obviously in his executive order, he mentions one country, Syria. Yeah. He doesn't mention Islam and doesn't mention Muslims. He just mentions with people whose views go against the Constitution, against the beliefs in America. Now, when you go through the Pew Research study from all of these Islamic countries, if you just pick Iraq and Afghanistan, the amount of people who want Sharia law in Afghanistan is 99%. In Iraq, it's 91%. Wow. The amount of people who think a woman should be stoned for adultery is in the 80% for Afghanistan, and it's 55% for Iraq. Now, their views and these people from those countries is not going to work. They go fundamentally against the American Constitution, against the people, against the views and the way of life in America. And you talk about freedom of religion. In Pakistan, this is what I think he should have banned all Muslim countries. That's what I think should have happened. I think Pakistan should have been the first country to be banned. In Pakistan, 90% of people believe that apostates should be punished with death. That means if you have Pakistani immigrants coming into the United States, 9 out of 10 of them believe that someone should be killed for changing their mind. Yeah. They don't allow free fall, and then you could say that after generation that problem will go away. In the UK, 37% of British-born Muslims want Sharia law. 37%. We have 4 million Muslims. That's over 1 million Muslims who want Sharia law. That's over 1 million Muslims that need to leave our country. But they're not going to, because we have weak, cowardice leadership. But I wish we had Trump in it. And also, 1 in 3 university students in the UK believe it's okay to kill for Islam. 1 in 3. So the problem doesn't go. So these views, they don't work. They're not going to work. And that's all Trump is recognising, that there's a big problem and we need to limit this problem.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know well what happens when countries do not have control of their borders. For those who are unfamiliar with what happened to thousands of young British girls by Islamic grooming gangs, could you share a little about that for us?
Yeah, I can. Well, first of all, when I say I know what happens, because the town that I'm from has a population of 200,000 people. 60 to 70,000 of them are Muslim. Yeah. When I was born in 1982, there was 1 mosque. Yeah. There's now in excess of 35 mosques.
Wow.
Every single restaurant in my town is halal. No Christmas decorations. St. George's parades have been banned in the past. Children told they're not allowed to bring the emblem of their country into school. All these sorts of things where you see an attack on your culture, you see an attack on your identity, and slowly but surely they're eroded. And people, if you said to people in my town's called Luton, it's 30 miles north of London. It was the launch pad for the 7/7 bomb plot. It's the home of the fertilizer bomber. He was from Luton. Wow. The Stockholm bomber was from Luton.
Wow.
Recently, we've just convicted another 4 Muslims from Luton who were planning to kill an American member of the American military at an army barracks in the UK. There's been so much terrorism. The majority of terrorism linked to Luton. Luton, I think, was named by the American security services as the epicenter for terrorist activity in Europe. So that's where I'm from. So I've grown up learning, listening, and really understanding what's happening and what Islam is, and in huge numbers across the country, not just in pretty much every city. If we pick Rotherham, for example, now Rotherham is a small town and it has a population. When you look at the Muslim community, I think there's about 3,000 that are aged between 18 and 50 men. Yeah, wow. In this small town with a population that size, 1,400 young girls have been raped, groomed, pimped, and that's come from charity records. And so this is official from a government investigation. The police knew it's happening. The politicians knew it's happening. There was a conspiracy of silence between them all, including the imams, because The police didn't want to deal with it or know how to deal with it because they didn't want to be deemed as racist. Because every single perpetrator in these crimes was Muslim men, and the victims were all white English girls. Now, if you look at the crime statistics, 90% of on-street gang grooming convictions now in the UK are Muslim men. 20% are called Mohammed. We only have a population of 4% Muslim.
Wow.
Look how overrepresented there is, and people. It's called grooming in the UK. It shouldn't be called grooming. It should be called rape jihad,
right? Because
that's what it is. These men have come in. It's an invading army has come into our country, and they're raping our kids, and they've been given authority and they've been allowed to do it. And what you've now seen is these cases have propped up in pretty much every city. Now that it's like they've been given the green light to start tackling them. You're seeing arrests and you're seeing court cases every week, every month. More court cases, another 20 Muslim men. And what makes these cases very different, which is a whole new concept of paedophilia in the UK, that for people to understand, is when these men are taking these young girls at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, this is a whole new case of paedophilia where men, work colleagues, brothers, cousins, brother-in-laws, so men with their wife's brother, with their fathers, are all raping these girls together at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
It's just, so it's a whole, what we have to understand is the whole moral guidance and way they view this in their community is a complete opposite to ours. This is acceptable. It's completely acceptable because, and if you know anything about Islam, then we know that there are many verses in the Quran which give them permission to do this. Take whatever your right arm possesses. They're allowed to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. In fact, there was an undercover camera footage of the main imam at a mosque in Cardiff, in Britain again, just 6 months ago, telling their followers that you can take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. It was all over on newspapers.
Oh my gosh.
Because they can take whatever the right arm possesses, and this has happened across our country. It's happened, and what we get told is they call them Asians. They say Asians. They're always trying to get the problem away from it being Muslims.
Yeah, of course.
And then when you put that on them, they say no, they're Pakistanis. No, they're not. Some are Iranian, some are Afghani, some are Iraqi. If you go to Holland, this exactly same profile of crime is happening with the Moroccans. So if you go to years ago in Australia, exactly the same profile of crime with was it Lebanese? So it's happening. It's happening across our country. This is one of, so when some people say, when Trump puts in bans like this, with America says we don't want these people in our country, I say it is okay for Americans and British people to ask, what do we get from this?
Right.
If we bring all these people in, where does it benefit us at all? Yeah. And I'll say from my previous experiences and from the stats and statistics, it's not going to benefit at all. In the UK, we have 4,000 would-be jihadists who are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The enemy are here. Yeah, they're here. Now, Trump's trying to stop them getting into America, but they're here in the UK already. That costs us £9 billion a year. £9 billion a year. If you look at all the different problems that they will import, whether they be sectarianism, whether they be health issues, whether they be if you look at the Pakistani community in the UK is 3%. Now, because of their cousin marriages, they represent 33% of the birth defects and disabilities in the UK.
Oh,
for a population of 3%.
Wow.
70% of Pakistanis in the city of Bradford, which is a major city in the UK, marry their first cousins.
Ugh.
Now, even though we all know it's wrong, scientifically it's wrong, it's advised against, they are all still doing it. Their children are dying at birth. They're being born completely retarded. Yeah. We're having to pay the benefits and pay the upbringing. I don't know, the cost of everything and the drain that the Islamic community will put on your country. In the UK, 50% of Muslim men are on benefits, 75% of Muslim women. Now, when we had 500,000 Muslims or 300,000 Muslims, that might not have been that big of a problem. Right. But when we've got 4 million, and when that becomes 8 million, and the stats aren't changing, it's the same percentages, because these people do not work.
No. They
do not work in general. So it's going to drain your society. So, again, you're allowed to ask yourself, how does it benefit us? Yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't benefit your country. No, there's no benefit you can have from importing Somalians into your country. There's no benefit.
No.
It doesn't benefit America.
No.
the average IQ of 68.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, they're illiterate too.
They're illiterate.
So and so they don't even know. They know nothing.
They're not going to be able to work. They're not going to.
No. We'll have to take care of them. Meanwhile, they'll be getting away with. I mean, we don't. Perhaps the left doesn't mind pedophiles, but we do. And so we want to protect our kids. That's the other problem we have. Of course, is the left. Though, as you shared in your book, "Enemy of the State," instead of protecting your free speech rights, excuse me. Why do you think the state has taken the position to protect an ideology of submission like Islam at the expense of your liberty?
So it depends how deep you want to look into it and who's in control of which countries and what their agendas are. If you look in the UK, for example, Saudi Arabia are in control of over 50% of our stock market. They own every port in the UK. They own Westfield Shopping Centre, the major shopping centres in London. They own Harrods. They own now some of the major.
They own Harrods, really?
They own Harrods, yeah. So between Dubai, Saudi Arabia, they own. They own the lumps. They own half of Barclays Bank. They own some of the major food stores. Their money is ingrained in our country, holding our country up.
Wow.
So whether that be the reason why we pander and we do not take on the Saudis, which is who we should be tackling, well, maybe that's why we've agreed to give them free rein to flood and pollute our country with their propaganda for Wahhabism. I don't know. A lot of the people in power, it's just like the European Union, but what you're seeing now, which unfortunately we don't really have a political voice that's good enough in the UK. We don't have a Geert Wilders here. We don't have a Marine Le Pen here. Even in Austria, they're doing well. The Freedom Party, I think you see the Swedish Democrat Party. All the opposition parties, the populist parties, who are basically parties that will oppose Islam, are gaining huge strides in the elections across Europe. This year, hopefully, we'll see Angela Merkel go. Mm-hmm. But the AfD are a new party, but they're flying in the elections.
Right.
It's all going to change. I can see. To be honest, if you go back to my speeches 7 years ago, I used to say there is a swing from left to right that started now. It's happening, and there's no police force. There's no CNN with their unlimited funding. There's no Islamic group. There's nothing. There's no left-wing group that can stop it. It started, and we're going to see it. And that's why I sit quite now comfortable knowing that everything we've said previously to this has happened. We were vilified. You understand, in the UK, 7 years ago, when we started talking about Islam and telling people about what's happening, these grooming things, we were vilified. Yeah. We were laughed at, and called extremists. Now, 7 years later, everyone's looking at what we said, looking at what we warned about, and understanding that we were right. And the reason why we were right is, and I'll say it again, is because I understood it growing up. I'd learned it all. I'd learned everything I needed to know about Islam through my life experiences, not through what I read in a book, first of all. Obviously, after reading the Quran and studying Islam, I've learned a lot more to help understand why. But I just knew through my life of growing up in a very hostile Islamic community, the huge difference. The town I'm in is one of the most diverse and multicultural towns in Britain. And I've grown up with every culture and every religion and every race. There's the white English are a minority in my hometown.
Wow.
But the blacks, the whites, everyone has just assimilated. Everyone's got along fine. Every other race and culture, apart from the Islamic community. So, I learned very early on what we're up against.
What you read in the Quran, it kind of confirmed what you were seeing, didn't it?
That's it. It made me understand. I then understand. I understood then. What I did is I dissected the Quran. I was on solitary confinement for 22 weeks, and I dissected the Quran. I opened it up because it's hard to make sense of because it's not in chronological order. But I dissected. So every single time there's a verse that said "Do not be friends with Christians or Jews,"
right.
I wrote it down, a reference, and within hours I had pages of references, and just that little snap. Then I thought, this is it. Because you have to understand this, the school I went to, we had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground.
Whoa.
When you went in a dinner hall, everyone sits amongst each other. The Muslims would be in the corner. The segregation and the isolation, which has nothing to do with us, it's not our fault, it's never been our fault. They do it themselves. They isolate and segregate themselves. And we never understood it. Or really, I thought it was Pakistanis. I thought this is what this is about. These Pakistani culture, the whole way they live is very different to us. And that's what this is about. Now, when I started dissecting the Quran, it all just fell into place. Everything. Yeah. You start telling people from the age of 4, hundreds of times on every other page, you cannot like or be friends with Christians or Jews. That segregation, that isolation, just made sense straight away.
Yeah,
made sense.
Exactly.
Everything I'd seen and experienced, sort of as I read through the book and continued dissecting it, it all just fell in. Yeah. And I understood that it's Islam. Well, that's what this is.
This is my last question here. That's just a great segue into it. From your experience with the ideology of Islam, do you believe President Trump was correct on the campaign trail when he made a revolutionary statement that Islam hates us? He didn't say all Muslims hate us. He said Islam hates us. Was he correct?
100%. I think it's like the majority of the Quran. People say, well, what's the Quran got to do with us? Because the majority percentage, say 60%, the majority of that Quran talks about us, how to treat us, how unclean we are, what they must do to us. It's about us.
Yeah.
So yeah, Islam does, and he was correct in saying, in not saying Muslims, because the reason why I say that is because most Muslims I meet,
yeah,
I don't think many Muslims understand the agenda of Islam.
No.
I don't. Most Muslims I meet don't know the life of Muhammad. They don't understand the things he did, the deeds he did, the terrible deeds, and what an immoral man he was. They don't understand.
Yeah.
So most Muslims are Muslim by name only. Most Muslims just might pray once a week on a Friday. They still might have a beer. They still might live their life, and their whole life is haram. But that's most Muslims. But then the problem is, because in their ideology that's ingrained into them to defend Islam, blindly defend Islam, and don't let anyone criticise Muhammad, and they feel, and you're not allowed to leave Islam or you'll be killed. Most Muslims are stuck in that system where they can't freely walk away because they'll be ostracised and isolated from their communities, or possibly even killed.
Yeah, exactly.
So I say to, when I meet Muslims, I say, you're a victim. That's the way I see it. I don't hate you. You are a victim of Islam.
Yes, exactly. That's what it says. You know what? Islam hates us. We hate Islam. We don't hate Muslims. We hate Islam.
Islam. I said, like, yeah. And when people say you're racist for that, it's like I say, if I dislike Scientology,
yeah.
If I dislike Scientology, is anyone going to call me a racist?
No, right?
No. Scientology is an idea. And Islam's an idea. Islam's an extremely bad idea.
Yes.
But it's just an idea.
Exactly.
That's what it is. So it's my God-given right to pick criticism with him. And when you start reading about what Muhammad did in his life, etc., and it needs criticism. Yeah.
Oh, sure does.
You know what I mean? It'd be a fool not to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be crazy not to. Tommy, where can listeners, because I'm going to have you back again very soon, because you have another book that's going to be released, and we'll have you back to talk about that. But where can the listeners in the meanwhile follow and support your work, and they can purchase your current book, Enemy of the State?
Yes, they can purchase my book, Enemy of the State, which is on Amazon. If you're in America, it's on Amazon Kindle. If you wanted a paperback or a copy of the book, you have to go on amazon.co.uk, and there's overseas option. Other than that, I'm on Twitter, and I'm debating on deleting my life to concentrate on my Twitter. And I'm at T Robinson New Era is my Twitter handle, and other than that, I see now what my role, I play it like my role, I feel, is to help wake people up, educate, and help them to understand what's happening and what's going to happen. And I think that a lot of people read books and tell stories, and I have a whole life of experiences that will allow people to understand this is what's going to happen when you become a minority to Muslims in your community.
Yes.
Yeah? Because I've witnessed it, I've watched it, and I've lived it.
Exactly. And that's what I want people to hear. And of course, I'll have those links, all those links and information that Tommy just shared. I'll have that on my live show page. Just go to AudreyRusso.com, click on the On Air button, and right under the show description, you'll find the links, each individually. So you can go there. You can go there, buy the book, whether you can buy it on Kindle or you want the paperback, or you can follow him on Twitter. Thanks so much, Tommy, again, for taking the time to share with us.
Thank you, Audrey.
Yes, and we look forward to you coming back and joining us again very soon. Until then, may God bless you, your work, and may God save Western civilization.
And make America great again.
Yes. Amen.
Love it.